Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. I am so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics, as long as that cornucopia is filled with footballs, because that's mostly the conversation today. I would love to get your thoughts. 719-247-1313. That number is good for calling or texting. You can also reach out via social media. I am at Gingerly Tweets on X. If you are even a casual listener of the program, you know it's Bo. It's been Bo Nix. It was going to be Bo Nix all along. And every step of the way, that wiggle room that maybe, okay, I can see possibly if this, that, and the other were to happen, that he would not be the starter week one. That wiggle room is going away. And going into last night, the only amount of wiggle room that you might have had to say, okay, it's going to be Bo Nix unless, and the unless for last night was if he fell completely flat on his face. Now, was there a decent chance that was going to happen? No. But throughout the week, you talk out, you go at it from all different sides, and you're like, okay, if Bo Nix fell flat on his face last night, looked terrible, then maybe you would be like, well, maybe Indy was just a good matchup, or it's feeling good, doesn't have the consistency, whatever. He was better last night. He was better. He didn't fall on his face. He was better than he was against Indianapolis in a shorter amount of time that we got to see him. Last week, the word I would use surrounding Bo Nix was comfortable. He looked comfortable. The word I would use last night is easy. It looked easy for him. Like Matt Damon in the professor's office, this stuff is a joke, slamming the paper on his desk level easy in Good Will Hunting. Like, that's the level of easy. And I get it. It's base defenses, no exotic looks. The Packers were sitting, I think, by one person's tally, like their top 35 players on the roster. Like, I get all that. I'm not talking about this being translatable to a Week 8 game in Arrowhead. But what he was facing last night, he looked to have little to no problem with it. And now he wouldn't use the word easy, but when he talks about the way it looks, or he looks in the offense, the word he uses is fit.
I think it's a really good fit, especially tonight. I mean, come out here, I'm very comfortable with the first few plays that were called, and they were kind of, keeping it within my comfort level, and that's, huge, especially for someone who's trying to get in there and execute. You want to run plays that you feel comfortable with, and that's what Coach Payton was calling tonight. So we do a good job of, practicing throughout the week and making sure we're prepared for those plays. And, yeah, I messed up a few tonight, and there'll always be those that you mess up, but you definitely want to, execute more than you mess up. And so that's what we were able to do tonight.
We'll have to get more elaboration on what he messed up. He didn't know where the line of scrimmage was on one play. That was the big mess up. The noticeable mess up that he had was when he crossed the line of scrimmage, when he threw that touchdown to Jaleel McLaughlin. 8 of 9, 80 yards and a touchdown does not feel like Bo Nix messed up a whole heck of a lot. Maybe if you dive into the all 22, you can find a missed read or something like that. But the results say it was pretty easy for him last night. Sean Payton's offense is all about quick decision making. Right? Don't let things linger and go forever. Go through your progressions quickly. You see something, hit it. That's Sean Payton's offense. One of the things that Bo Nix has been hailed for is his processing ability. And it's much easier to process what you're seeing when what you're seeing is pretty straightforward. Again, Green Bay's not going into their bag against Bo Nix last night. Okay, they're saving that for Jared Goff. They're saving that for Caleb Williams. They're not doing it. So Bo Nix, I don't mean it as a backhanded compliment. This guy is a rookie. Okay, so like, one, what else is he supposed to do? Like, make it look tougher than it really is? He read the defense easily and made good decisions with the football. The number one thing that I was looking for, because he showed that against Indianapolis, certainly, the difference between Indy and Green Bay that I want to see the ball go downfield more. That was my number one thing. Sure enough, 8.9 yards per completion as opposed to 6 against Indianapolis. Best sequence of the game. Late in the first quarter, early second. Lucas Kroll, who I'm still waiting to try and figure out what everyone sees in Lucas Kroll, because I don't see it. But anyway, Lucas Kroll gets called for a hold. So they're 1st and 20. 1st and 20 last year, 1st and 20 the year before, 1st and 20 for the last 6 years is a death sentence for a drive when it comes to the Denver Broncos. That's it. You get behind the sticks like that, 1st and 20, now you're just trying to get your punter in a good position. That's what Broncos football has been. 1st and 20, Nick scrambles for 10, so still behind the sticks, but it's 2nd and 10. Immediately completes a ball to Cortland Sutton to put them in the red zone. 1st and 20 turned into 1st and goal from the 4 like that. Tell me the last time a Broncos quarterback did that against any defense in any game. Here's Bo Nix on that particular sequence.
We were, sitting there at 1st and 10, I believe, and we were in the huddle, and Mike McGlinchey said something great. He said, "Just one play at a time," so that kind of sets us all and gets us, kind of in a one play focus. And once again, we were able to get back to 2nd and 10 and then get a 1st down. So it took us 2 plays to overcome that penalty or whatever the loss was. And it's just good to see your offense do that. Sometimes you're gonna be faced with a setback and you want to overcome those because it's not always going to be pretty. And so to be able to do that was really good for us.
Yeah, it's going to happen a lot. It happens to everybody. The Kansas City Chiefs get in 1st and 20. It's going to happen a lot to the Denver Broncos. And Bo Nix got out of it with very little issue. 2 plays, boom, boom, 1st and goal from the 4. It's easy. This is easy for him. So now the next progression is to make it more difficult. right? Get him out there. Week 1, Seattle. See how he does. It's for weeks I've been saying that it's going to be Bo Nix as the starter, but now it's bordering on comical that anyone could make a case or still make it seem like there's still some deciding going on. There's not. There hasn't been. It's been him from the start. It's optics. That's the only thing that you want to really drill down into it. That's the only thing that has kept Bo Nix from being named the starter already. That's it. It's optics. Sean Payne asked last night about naming a starter. He's not going to do it not going to do that. He's going to go about it the right way, right? He's got to sit down, look at the film. He's got to meet with all 3 of these guys. He's going to do it the quote unquote right way. He's not going to be like all of us and be like, yeah, it's Bo. I mean, we're all there. We've all been there. But Sean Payton's going to go through this, and it's a little annoying, right? Just delaying the inevitable. But there's, you got to think about 52 other guys in the locker room. You have to think about the 2 quarterbacks that were told that they had a shot at this thing. Now it's like there's nothing. There's nothing standing in Sean Payton's way. If you wanted to make him quote unquote earn it, he did. He earned it. 2 preseason games. Absolutely the best quarterback on the Denver Broncos. Forget his draft status. Forget name. Doesn't matter. Look at all 3 of these quarterbacks through 2 games. Bo Nix has been the best in both of them. He earned it. It's time to do it. You've done it the right way. You've made Bo Nix earn it. I get all that. It's time now. The better question at this point is, do you even need to play him against Arizona? He's got to be the week 1 starter. And it gets back to the very foundation of who Bo Nix is and why Sean Payton drafted him. Caleb Williams was given the starting role immediately. Right? It wasn't even a conversation. He was the starter. Bo Nix has played nearly twice as much as Caleb Williams has in college. Twice as many. Jaden Daniels today got named the starter for the Washington Commanders. Bo Nix has played 3/4 of a college football season more than Jaden Daniels has. The entire premise of drafting Bo Nix is that you have a guy that's ready to go. And everything that you have seen since he got into a Broncos uniform shows that he's ready. You look at him and Caleb, it's like they both shown exactly what you expected them to be. Caleb Williams is flashier. Caleb Williams looks capable of making bigger plays than Bo Nix, but Bo Nix looks the most ready. Right? Sean Payton wanted a quarterback in this draft that he could start week 1. That's what he went into this draft trying to find. He's found it. And you absolutely want him on the field for week 2. Right? We've been debating whether Bo Nix should be the starter week 1. Do you want Jarrett Stidham to be the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos week 2 against Pittsburgh? Absolutely not. And it's nothing against Jarrett Stidham. It's you want that Nix versus Russ. You know who I know also wants Nix versus Russ? Sean Payton. You don't think Sean Payton wants to see Bo Nix go head to head with Russell Wilson and all that entails? Absolutely, he does. And there's no point in just not playing him against Seattle. If you want to play him week 2, just play him week 1. He'd be more prepared for week 2. I wish Sean Payne would just name him the starter so we could stop, trying to fabricate scenarios in which Bo Nix isn't the starter week 1. In every one of those made up scenarios, he's answered. Right? He's taken it away. It wasn't just Indy. It was also Green Bay. It wasn't just home. It was road. And the things that you, me, Sean Payton asked him to do, he did better. I can't get past 6 wins for this team. This is not a discussion about because Bo Nix is this, then this is going to happen during the regular season. I still can't get the Broncos to more than 6 wins, even with what he's shown the last 2 weeks. But I'll tell you this, I'll promise you this. The only quarterback on this roster that has a chance to move the Broncos above that win total is Bo Nix. Jared Stidham, you're pretty much locked. To me, you're locked into that 6. He's not going to win you any games you're not supposed to. He's not going to lose you any games you're not supposed to lose. Right? That's what a backup quarterback is. Zach Wilson, there's an equal chance that he's going to cost you 2 games, then win you 2 games you didn't expect to. So again, go down the list. Draft status, how have they looked in the preseason? Upside. Well, Bo Nix checks every box. And through these 2 preseason games, there's nothing left. There's no alternative. There's no caveat. He's the guy. He always has been, but now there's just, you can't even if you're trying to be, if you're trying to be argumentative, you don't even have anything to say about it. You have nothing left. He went out there again and was arguably better than he was the last time he was on a football field. So Sean Payne can do it whenever he wants to make it look good and make it look like Bo Nix earned it. He earned it. He was going to earn it. They were going to make sure that he earned it, but he's earned it. He has 2 games. (719) 247-1313. Any doubt in your mind Bo Nix is going to be the starter week 1? And I'll take your thoughts on his performance last night as well. I threw it out the 6-win thing, so I suppose I'll get into that on why I still don't think that the Broncos can win, on paper, can win more than 6 games. But as I said was going to happen this weekend, if you're a Broncos fan, look me dead in the eye and tell me you did not pay attention to what happened with the Pittsburgh Steelers game. You absolutely did, and we will talk about it coming up next. The Colorado State Fair and Rodeo begins this weekend, August 23rd. It runs through September 2nd with a ton of free attractions and entertainment, plus a carnival and a great concert lineup featuring Ludacris, Trace Atkins, the Goo Goo Dolls, and more. It is fun for the whole family down in Pueblo starting this Saturday, August 23rd. Running through September 2nd. Plan your visit at coloradostatefair.com. And since the fair is starting this week, I'll be giving away some tickets coming up a little bit later on in the program. 719-247-1313 is the text and the phone line. You want to give your thoughts on Bo Nix, as Steve G has done. Says Nix has done almost everything Peyton wanted. Not giving him the starting position is more for the other two QBs. God forgive me for this statement, but Peyton picked the right guy at their draft position. I said this after the Broncos drafted him. When we evaluate draft picks, it's compared to the other draft picks on the board. For instance, is Brock Bowers a better tight end than Bo Nix is a quarterback? Yes. Is Bo Nix better than any of the quarterbacks that were taken before him? Maybe J.J. McCarthy. Okay, two things can be true at once. It can be true that given the players that were available, given how good Bo Nix is compared to those players, the ideal scenario is that the Broncos trade back. I don't know what they were worried about trading back, but you never know. Somebody could jump you and everything. Bo Nix is not this 12th best player in this draft. It just wasn't. Okay, but if Bo Nix hits, and you can define hits however you want, we won't care. Right? We're reacting in the moment on draft night when there are other names on the board that you go, that guy's more talented. This guy really is a second-round pick. It's okay to have that kind of a conversation on draft night and still understand that as years go by, we care less about the draft position. We do care who is taken before and after you. But whether Bo Nix was 12 or 25 or 36 or 52, as long as it's not some extreme like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, or Caleb Williams at number 1, everything else just kind of blends together. Bo Nix taken in the late 20s is better than taken at 12. But I knew Sean Payton liked him, said it from the beginning, and I thought that Sean Payton could do some things with him. And we're seeing that. Meanwhile, in Pittsburgh, chalk this under I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen because we do it all the time. When it comes to your favorite team, we are genetically predisposed to liking someone more when they're wearing our colors. And many times it's to the degree of completely overrating who they are as a player. Best example of this for a Bronco that I have in my head, and there's an obvious reason why it's in my head, because he came from Kansas City. The year that the Broncos picked up Jamal Charles, I took so many thoughts from people saying Jamal Charles is going to be dynamite with the Broncos. And having just watched him with the Chiefs, I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's not. He's done. You're going to get nothing from him. I kept saying it because I watched him. I watched it play out. But there's something that happens when a player that you watch from afar is now up close and personal and he's wearing your uniform, you like him better. And we do it all the time. The closest example going on currently in Colorado sports is Russell Westbrook. Look at the discourse surrounding Russell Westbrook. And we need the NBA season to get here soon because it's building and it's building and it's building. And what I fear for Russell Westbrook is that nobody is going to be satisfied with what Russell Westbrook is because people are building him up and building him up and building him up because he's in a Nuggets uniform and not a Laker uniform or a Thunder uniform. And people are getting carried away with what he can do. So it's not a uniquely Pittsburgh problem. It's not even a uniquely Denver problem. It happens with every fan base. Steelers fans did this with Russell Wilson. And to a further degree, I think some people in the national media did this too. And in that regard, it's the change of scenery that it affects the psychology. You think, oh, well, it didn't work here, but it could here. That happened with Russell Wilson over the last few months. What this move was supposed to be was just, we don't have anybody else. Right? We got nothing out of the quarterback position last year. We're taking a flyer on Russell Wilson. And the best thing you could say about the Pittsburgh Steelers adding Russell Wilson was if it doesn't work out, they're only on the hook for $1 million as opposed to 42. Right? That's what it started out as. Like, why the hell not? Just pick up Russell Wilson. You don't have anybody else. If they could have gotten the Justin Fields deal done earlier, I don't even know that Russell Wilson would be on the team. This was supposed to be a no risk, very little reward type of move. And now I'm hearing people like fainting at what they saw from Russell Wilson the other day. It's like you totally lost what this was supposed to be. Yeah, he was terrible. He was like Seattle told you they were terrible, and Broncos, people didn't listen around here. And then Sean Payton, who thinks that Mike Tomlin knows better than Sean Payton when it comes to quarterbacks? This was never about Russell Wilson in this system or in this town or with this coach or with these weapons. Was going to be any better. The guy costs $1 million. It's not. Zach Wilson makes more money than Russell Wilson is getting paid by the Pittsburgh Steelers. But lo and behold, Russell Wilson goes out there, looks awful. Looks exactly like he did with Denver. Can't see the middle of the field, takes sacks, looked exactly like he had for 2 years with the Denver Broncos. And I'm hearing people nationally be like, Steelers might finish last in that division. Yeah, weren't we already kind of there that if the Browns get anything out of Deshaun Watson, Pittsburgh absolutely is the least talented team in that division. The goal for the Pittsburgh Steelers is not even based on the division. They're doing nothing to change the expectation around this team. The expectation is have a winning record. That's what Pittsburgh wants. They want a winning record. That's independent of the division. Right? They're not going for the AFC North title. They don't even win that division with Russell Wilson from 5 years ago. With Burrow and Lamar. Yeah, Pittsburgh could finish last in this division. At best, they were third. Like, people acting like Pittsburgh was supposed to go to the Super Bowl or something, and now are like, oh, this is a disaster. It's not a disaster. It's Russell Wilson. Saw it up close for 2 years. So did you. He's washed. He's done. It's kind of like the Bo Nix thing being the starter. Like, you knew you could trust your own eyes and you're like, he's the starter. It's the same with Russell Wilson. Like, you could trust your eyes and say that Russell Wilson was washed. But the most emphatic stamp on it was Sean Payton going, I can't stand this guy. He was done with him before Halloween. I don't know. In addition to Pete Carroll, right? So you didn't believe Pete Carroll, and you're not going to believe Sean Payton and Pete Carroll that this dude is washed? Well, I guess I'm glad you're there now. I'm reading Mike Florio's book, and he has a section on Russell Wilson getting out of Seattle. You may remember that one of the tangible things that Russell Wilson pointed to in that interview with Dan Patrick, he complained about how many sacks he took. And he said Seattle needed to invest in the offensive line. That's what he said. That's what Russell Wilson said. Russell Wilson said, I get sacked too much. I need more help on my offensive line. So he gets traded to Denver. Okay. Continues to take an ungodly amount of sacks. Okay. Sean Payton cuts him and eats the biggest dead cap hit in the history of football to get rid of him. And then he goes to Pittsburgh and in his debut gets sacked multiple times. Meanwhile, the Denver Broncos don't surrender a single sack in week 1 of the preseason. Not one. Could it be that maybe Russell Wilson is the problem? That Russell Wilson is to blame for the number of sacks that Russell Wilson takes? How many more teams does he have to go to before everyone is all on the same page? And I thought the Steelers knew. It was just like, why not? And now it's like, oh no, he's terrible. Yeah, he is. He's been that way. For 4 years, he's been this way. Russell Wilson's entire existence in the National Football League is just biding time till he can hit one moonball downfield and make you forget about the previous 10 plays. That's literally how he exists. There is no consistency from down to down. The things that you need to do to really move the ball down the field in today's NFL, he cannot do. He just banks on, I got 1 or 2 plays a game in me to fool you into thinking I still have something left. He has nothing left. So he's going to do that for the game, and then he's going to sit up there and be asked a very direct question about his first game in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, not about the atmosphere, not about the honor it is to wear the black and gold, a very direct football question on how he would assess his first game as a Steeler. And of course, this is what Russell Wilson says.
Good to be in black and gold, just to have the honor to wear the jersey and to be out there with our teammates, man. It's just, it's a blessing for sure. And just to be in the stadium again and playing, putting my cleats on and getting ready to go. But we always want to be able to step on the field and between the white lines and find a way to win. We didn't get to do that tonight.
All that was missing there was for him to name all 10 guys that he played with on the field. We got George Pickens, and then Najee Harris is right behind me, and we got Freiermuth at tight end, and the offensive line, we got this guy. And that's exactly what you heard from him every time out in Denver. Cliches, generalities, ducking the question, but doing it with a smile on his face. He stunk. Here's the problem that the Steelers have. Because to me, it was always going to be Justin Fields eventually. To me, the Steelers got Russ, and then they're like, we really want Justin Fields. And I think their hope was, we'll throw Russell Wilson out there early to try and coach some of these Chicago bad habits out of Justin Fields. And then eventually we will go to him. Here's the problem. Russell Wilson isn't the best quarterback on the Steelers roster. He hasn't looked the best. Justin Fields should be the starter week 1. And that's not a problem because at least Justin Fields is on the Pittsburgh roster. The problem the Steelers are going to run into now is that Russell Wilson cannot function as a backup. And there are other guys like Cam Newton was one of these guys. You just can't have that image of him holding a clipboard. It's just, you can't do it. He's not what you want in a backup quarterback. You want steady. Just maintain. That's not what Russell Wilson does. So now if Mike Tomlin makes the right decision, then just start Justin Fields week 1 and just get it over with, because we know Justin Fields was going to play sooner rather than later. But now you're stuck with this issue of Russell Wilson standing there all awkwardly on the sideline and the camera panning to him every 3 seconds. That's the issue now. If you made the change week 4, week 8, that's that many fewer weeks that you have to deal with that. Now you're going to have to do it right out of the gate, week 1. Justin Fields has to be the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Has to be. Because of one thing above all else. He can run out of sacks. Russell Wilson runs into them. That's it. I don't need to go any further than that. I don't need to break down the film. Justin Fields can get out of sacks. Russell Wilson will run into them. That alone, that's not the only reason, but that's the only reason I need. Oh, Steelers might not finish higher than 4th in the best division in football. Yeah, I thought that was a possibility. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports on this Monday after preseason week 2 on Extra Sports 1300. on the road Thursday and Friday doing the show at Circa Resort and Casino in Vegas. It's going to be the start of something I'm very excited about that we're going to be rolling out with Circa for this upcoming football season. Helping them roll out the their Circa Survivor and Circa Sports Millions contests, and talking about their sports book, the app, which I can invite you to download right now if you so choose, where their odds are their promos, and it's better for the better. So looking forward to that Thursday and Friday from Vegas. What was one of the last things that I said on Friday? I don't expect people to listen every minute of every show, so I will remind you. I said at the end of Friday's show that Caitlin Clark is about to go scorched earth on the league. She's had a month off. Her first sustained restful period in a long time. She was left off of the Olympic team. And just even the normal, hey, rookies are going to improve. Rookies are going to figure it out. She is going to have a massive back part of this schedule. And the Indiana Fever will become the team that no one wants to play in the playoffs. In 2 games after the Olympic break, she went 29-5-10 against Phoenix and 23-5-9 against Seattle. She's going to start becoming like the Nikola Jokic of the WNBA. Like, she's going to fill up every line on the stat sheet. And it's going to translate to wins for the Indiana Fever. And you watch her in these 2 games. She is a little salty. She's getting on the officials. She's, giving it to the crowd a little bit. She is angry, and she is soaking up all of this because she's going to make it her stated goal to lay waste to everyone that she can in the WNBA. And what else has returned? The pettiness is back. And I'm not going to put Caitlin Clark above it, especially in Seattle. I think, she was egging on the crowd and, doing everything short of the Hulk Hogan, like putting her hand on her ear. Like, she's getting into this a little bit, but it's always kind of away from players. Every time I see Caitlin Clark do something, it's always in response to somebody else. Diana Taurasi the other night says something to her. She says something back. Or she just, doing what some athletes do, getting themselves pumped up and into it. When she was kind of egging on the crowd against Seattle, she's walking by the Seattle bench, and Skylar Diggins-Smith, you could see the video, it's all over social media, very clearly picks up the pace. She's walking, it's a timeout. Caitlin Clark is walking around the Seattle bench, not looking at the bench. She's looking at the crowd. But she's walking by the Seattle bench, which is where Skylar Diggins-Smith is heading. And you could clearly see that when Caitlin Clark is within striking distance, she picks up her pace and bumps into her intentionally. For what purpose? What purpose does that serve? Other than to make you feel good about being petty. And then after the game, which this is something that happens all the time, I have heard Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and every member of the Denver Nuggets be asked about opposing players, right? It's one of the storylines when a different team comes in to visit and they have a player of note, right? They ask Jokic about Wemby. They ask Jokic about Embiid. They ask Jamal Murray about Anthony Edwards. Like, this happens. It's normal. It's part of the story of that night. Jewel Lloyd for the Seattle Storm is asked about Caitlin Clark and the improvement that she has seen. Refuses to answer the question and starts talking about her own team's rookies, which some of that I'm okay with, right? But answer the question first, right? Answer the question, and then you can make a point to shout out your teammates. Right? Caitlin Clark, she's improved leaps and bounds. But you know what? I love what our young rookies are doing. But by refusing to answer the question, a question that is posed to every athlete whenever there's a player of note that comes into their building or plays against a team, there's going to be a beat writer or a national writer that's going to ask the question. Just answer it. With everything going on, even if Jewel Lloyd isn't trying to be petty, isn't trying to diss Caitlin Clark, you're not helping squash the narrative that the league is still even past the midway point, or at the midway point, wherever they are, of the season, you're still upset about the attention Caitlin Clark gets. So it's all back. It's all back. Caitlin Clark, 2 massive games, the Indiana Fever, 2 wins, and opponents getting very, very salty and petty when it comes to Caitlin Clark. I haven't seen any numbers through the weekend. The Seattle game was on ESPN, so those are the ones we look at. The game against Phoenix was on Ion. I don't think that the league wants to show the audience on Ion. So we'll see what ESPN's numbers bail, because I am interested to see what kind of a niche the WNBA carves out as we approach NFL. 719-247-1313 coming up next. Speaking of the NFL, back to Bo Nix. You'll hear more from the Broncos' soon-to-be-named starting quarterback. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. That was weird. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports. Although 2 songs playing at once is one of my favorite sounds. I don't. I know it's a little bit jarring for you, the listener, so that's why I cut that off. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports on a Monday that has suddenly turned very rainy here in Colorado Springs. Drive safe on the roads out there. Reminder: you can watch the show live on a daily basis via our social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle all the same at XTRA Sports 1300. So Sean Payton did not name Bo Nix the starting quarterback, although if social media was any indication, last night there's a few thousand people who have done the job for Sean Payton. But I said this earlier, he's going to do this the quote-unquote right way, right? He wanted to make it look like Bo Nix was earning it, and his performance says he earned it, right? Just take away what you already knew about this quarterbacking situation and where it was headed. If you just assessed the 3 quarterbacks, who would you feel best about? Just blind taste test. Forget the names on the back of the jerseys. Forget where they came from. Forget what round they were drafted in. Just watch these 3 play. Bo Nix is the best one out of the 3. So mission accomplished, Sean Payton. You made him earn it. But he's going to sit down with all 3 of these guys. He's going to have a conversation because he doesn't care about you as much as he cares about the guys in the locker room, which you can, even though that sounds a little mean, you can understand if you really think about it. So he's going to do this the right way. And I would expect it to happen this week. I would. Now, Bo Nix was asked last night. Well, you can hear the question.
Bo, do you think you've done enough to earn the starting quarterback job?
That's not for me to decide.
Do you feel confident, though, in what you've done in 2 preseason games? You feel
Yep.
good about the body of work?
Yep.
That was Chris Thomason of the Gazette asking that question. Very short answers. If you are Bo Nix, you do not want to look over your shoulder as you're about ready to cross the finish line. You don't want to start your celebration before you've crossed the finish line. The last thing Bo Nix needs is to draw the ire of his head coach, who can be a little temperamental, because he goes out there beating his chest about how he deserves to be the starting quarterback of this team. And I forget which lineman talked about it. Maybe it was McGlinchey that said he's got a blend of confidence and humbleness. Humility, I believe, is the better word to use there. Confidence and humility. And you heard it right there. Bo Nix is an expandant, not my decision. But when asked, do you feel good about it? Yep. He's confident. He knows. He knows he's outplayed Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson. I don't know what his thoughts were going into this thing, and he'll never share them. Hey, I thought I was going to be the starter from day one. But part of what we haven't talked about this as much, although it's been there this whole time, winning the locker room. You can hear it. He's winning over the locker room with that kind of blend of confidence and humility that he has. He's winning the Broncos over. And they're a more difficult bunch to win over than, with all due respect, you are as a fan. Right? I saw people putting out tribute videos to Bo Nix on draft night. So, like, look, you didn't need much convincing. The players in that locker room do. And Bo Nix has set out while he's the easiest path is by playing well. But there's all these interactions that happen on a day-to-day basis, all these interviews and meetings and everything like that, where Bo Nix has got to win over the guys around him. And by all accounts, he's done that. And here, when he's about to cross the finish line and be the Broncos starter week 1, he's not going to take a moment to gloat or beat his chest or say anything that will make Sean Payton go, yeah, you know what? I didn't like that. I'm going with Jared Stidham week 1. I mean, the guy played Taysom Hill at quarterback. Like, there's literally no limit to what Sean Payton will do. Right? If you play Taysom Hill as your quarterback or Jameis Winston, I mean, pick one. Like, he believes in himself so much that if he thought it would be good to send Bo Nix a message because on the postseason or the post-game press conference that he did after the Green Bay game, he beat his chest a little bit or went on to explain why he should be the starter, Sean Payton would sit him. Nope. Going with Zach Wilson instead. Sorry. You need to learn, Rook. So, Bo Nix, as he has in every situation, handled this perfectly. It's not my call, but yeah, feel good about it. And he should. Smaller sample size than you got against Indy, arguably better. Arguably better. The big thing that Sean Payton was harping on throughout the week were these off-platform throws. Right? There's one very early in the Indy game. There's one a little bit later where you looked and you said, you know, Bo Nix could set his feet and throw that ball. That was the thing that Sean Payton kept going back to throughout the week that he wanted to see from Bo Nix. Here's Bo's assessment of his footwork against Green Bay.
Thought it was, good. The pocket was great, able to stand in there and deliver some throws. And footwork piece is always tricky because sometimes you just go off of natural and you go off of feel. Sometimes you're able to go in rhythm, and those are the good ones. But we know it doesn't always necessarily happen like that. So sometimes you got to break the pocket. Sometimes you got to run. We had a few opportunities tonight where we got out the pocket. One that was called back. It was really close. So, and then another was able to go get some yards and cut the yardage in half that we needed. So those are always good. You always want to escape, but you definitely want to stay on time. The more on time you can stay, play within rhythm, I think it just opens up all the rest of the movements.
And you heard him get a little defensive there in the middle because off-platform throws are something that detractors of Bo Nix have brought up throughout his time at Auburn and Oregon and brought it up leading up to the draft. So he's a little sensitive to that, and you could hear that in the middle there. Like, sometimes he can't help it, essentially, is what he said in the middle there. And he's not wrong. But it's how many times are those legitimate situations where you can't, and how many of those are actual times where you should set your feet. But you can tell Bo Nix has heard this about him a lot. I don't know if I saw any. I mean, it's easy to say he didn't do that when he goes 8 of 9, right? But, you could still complete passes and look at it and say he should have set his feet there. Didn't really see that. And the one to Jaleel McLaughlin that was called for being over the line of scrimmage, if he set his feet, he would be even further across the line of scrimmage. So Didn't see that. I thought it was better. And it was only a couple instances against Indy, and I didn't catch any against Green Bay. Here's the thing that Bo Nix was focused on improving on and whether he thinks he improved.
Wanted to get in and out of the huddle quick. Sometimes whenever the play gets in there, you get up to the line, you feel rushed, but just felt like, tonight emphasis was getting in and getting out of the huddle. Sometimes we have longer play calls, so we want to stay close to the huddle and get the guys out so you can break and get the right play that's called. And I felt like we did a much better job of that, and we were playing ahead and didn't really feel rushed.
We don't talk about the style of play for the Broncos like we do some of the other teams that reside at what I'm forgetting. If only there was something on the Broncos uniform that would remind me how many feet above sea level they were, then I would be able to recall it. But I can't for the life of me remember that number. Maybe something they should include in their uniform. But anyway, we never really talk about it with the Broncos. Right? For years, the Nuggets, we want to get up and down the floor, right? Fast pace, playing at altitude. Avalanche has been that way. Rockies, it's just, the ball flies, and what do you do to try and counteract that or to try to, take advantage of it? We never talk about, other than the kicking game. I do think it happens in the kicking game quite a bit. And I'm watching last night. I think Will Lutz gave up after about 2 kickoffs. This new dynamic kickoff, which there has been nothing dynamic about it through 2 weeks of the preseason. But this new kickoff, it might be a little bit tricky at altitude. I mean, Will Lutz just gave up. He's like, to heck with this. I'm kicking out of the back of the end zone. But like that, we may see more touchbacks. It's far down the list of things I'm looking out for this season, but I would just be curious if somebody put it in front of me at the end of the season, if there were more touchbacks in Denver. It probably already is, but everybody has touchbacks, right? But now when you're de-incentivized from kicking out of the back of the end zone, I feel like Denver's going to lead the league in touchbacks. Might be a little tricky, especially early on in the year. But we don't talk about it from like an offense or defense perspective. Bo Nix is talking about how quickly they want to get to the line, how quickly everything is quick with Sean Payton's offense. Right? Get the play calling quickly, get them to the line quickly, make your reads quickly, take the snap quickly, go through your progressions quickly. And we know they're not going to go deep downfield. Right? Those Russell Wilson takes forever to develop moon balls that he likes to throw. There won't be any of that with Bo Nix. Right? Short pass. I feel like that might be a way of doing things at altitude. That might be a good idea. Right? Run a bunch of plays, but run them quickly. Get to the line quickly. Don't let the defense rest. Like Sean Payton's did this in New Orleans, right? And New Orleans aren't they under sea level? So it's just the way that Sean Payton operates. And I don't think it was a reason why Greg Penner hired him. But now that I can see that the Broncos offense can actually go quickly, now that Russell Wilson is gone, I think they can use that to their advantage, playing at 5,280 feet. But, I want to bring you this. It was Bo Nix's first game in Denver, so significant. Here's Bo on what last night was like.
I thought the atmosphere was awesome. Obviously, my first game here, and even though it was a preseason game, I thought it was really fun. It was a great atmosphere. Kept the fans engaged, kept us on the sideline engaged. these games are kind of strange because you're playing a certain amount of time, then you do know you're coming out. But when that happens, you just want to stay engaged with the guys and have a good time, and because that's really what you do it for. You go out there and celebrate with everybody, and we're all just kids at heart having fun playing football.
He hasn't seen nothing yet. Wait till week 2. Wait till he steps onto that field week 2. Given it's the regular season. 2, the opponent. Atmosphere at Empower Field is going to be even better. I think they had 11,000 no-shows last night. Which, for once, you actually wonder why there were 11,000 no-shows. Like, I know it's preseason, but Bo Nix. 719-247-1313. So, should Bo Nix play against Arizona? Get into that subject next here on Extra Sports 1300. Celebrate Cyan Night with your Colorado Springs Switchbacks Saturday, August 24th Just double checking that was Saturday. Be at Widener. I know it's Saturday, but I was checking, make sure it was August 24th is Saturday. It is. Be at Widener Field starting at 6 as the first 2,000 fans will get a special edition Switchbacks clear bag provided by Widener Apartment Homes. And then after your Switchbacks, be I-25 rivals New Mexico United. Experience an awesome fireworks display. Get your tickets for this and any of the remaining matches at Widener Field down to the last. I don't know how many home matches it is, but it's now 11 matches left in the season for the Switchbacks. So about half of those will probably be at home, maybe a little bit more than that. So get your tickets for this Saturday or any of the remaining home matches at switchbacksfc.com. We'll see if Sean Payton names Bo Nix the starter this week. I would expect him to. I don't know what else there is. I think the better question with Bo Nix at this point is, does he play against Arizona? And I don't think so. And I don't think he should. Because, one, if he's named the starter this week, he has nothing left to prove, right? The competition, even though it's been over, is now officially over. And I just don't know what else you're going to get, because him being a rookie quarterback, I would be inclined to say, hey, more game reps. But it's just looks so good with Bo Nix that I feel like there's just he doesn't need any more. You know what Bo Nix needs? A defense that's the number one defense of a team, playing their starters, disguising looks. Like, he needs to be in the regular season. That's the next thing for Bo Nix. He's going to face another team playing a bunch of bench players and guys that will get cut in base defenses with vanilla, looks. And I know it's going to happen. He's going to march the Broncos downfield. They're going to score on nearly every drive. There's nothing left. There's value in seeing him again after Indy. Right? Go out there and show it again. Do it again. And he did. Do you need to see it in that situation in a preseason game again? I don't think so. And besides, if you names Bo Nix the starter this week, guess what you get to do, which I think is Sean Payton's second favorite thing to making sure that Bo Nix is the starter, showcasing Zach Wilson. The dude threw a challenge flag last night. Threw a challenge flag. Stopped the game. So Zach Wilson could remain on the field. Like, he is trying to sell this guy to the rest of the league so hard. And if you name Bo Nix the starter, you don't have to say that Jared Stidham is his backup, even though you think that he is. Taking the financial part of it out. Right? And Mike Kliss talked about it on the broadcast last night. Like, I get it. There's a financial side of this, but I just don't see that Sean Payton would make that kind of move at that position. It's too important. Too important. Other positions, perhaps the Broncos make some financially driven decisions. Like with the Tim Patrick, for instance. But with the quarterback, I think he feels it's too important. So they could save, what, $3 to $5 million? I don't see why he would do that. And I still don't believe the Broncos will carry 3 quarterbacks. So if you name Bo Nix the starter, then you could give at least Zach Wilson an entire half, maybe 3 quarters. Get Jared Stidham in with the best unit. Because that dude, it would be better to showcase Zach Wilson with the ones. And maybe that's what he will end up doing. But Jared Stidham deserves to play with the best possible lineup the Broncos have, because I am just short of saying that the Broncos players around Jared Stidham are sabotaging him. False start penalties, holding penalties, fumbles, drop passes. Like, they are not playing well for Jared Stidham, and it is not Jared Stidham's fault. So he deserves to be out there a little bit more with whatever starters may be out there. But I'd be just fine with Sean Payton just playing Zach Wilson the whole game. Right? Because I think Bo Nix is the starter. I think Jared Stidham is his backup. And it's only a matter of, will they carry Zach Wilson? Give him the whole game. But some of the bloom has come off of that rose after last night, hasn't it, with Zach Wilson? I think, and they're talking about Bo Nix now on SportsCenter. I don't think Bo Nix needs to play. The only meaningful reps that he can take at this point are against Seattle week 1. So I would be good with Sean Payton just giving Zach Wilson the whole game, showcasing him, trying to get somebody to take on his $2.5 million or half of it or 3/4 of it. But I've seen all I need to see with Bo Nix until the regular season. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. The other rookies, not unlike Bo Nix, kind of stayed where they were. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on which rookie you are. Jonah Ellis was good again. Forced the fumble. Had a little bit of an injury scare, looked just in the end like a stinger. But you have Cooper and Browning as like your top duo. And then you can piggyback off of them with Benito and Ellis. And that's what I'm talking about with Vance Joseph's defenses. It's always about coming at you in waves. Right? Vance Joseph hasn't had a lot of supremely talented defenses in his career. Right? It's been kind of a collective effort. And if you can set it up, ideally you just have a dude. You have a Bosa, you have a Mac, you have a Chris Jones, you have a Max Crosby. Like, you just have a dude. Right? That's the best case scenario. But the next best thing is being able to have 2 solid duos of pass rushers that you can employ. And it feels like they may have that with Browning Cooper and then Benito and Jonah Ellis. But Jonah Ellis played well again last night. And on the other side, Troy Franklin. What is the deal with him? Like a no-show. And Marvin Mims didn't play a lot, but I don't know that it's for the same reason. Right? Marvin Mims, if for nothing else, he's making the team to return kicks. Right? But I think the Broncos know pretty well that Marvin Mims is going to be in their wide receiver room once the season rolls around. Troy Franklin, there's no guarantee, and Ryan Harris said on the broadcast last night that he was open a few times against Indy. I didn't see that, but no catches for Troy Franklin last night. I don't think the Broncos would bail on him. I think you're talking about a Lil Jordan Humphrey or a Brandon Johnson. I think one of those guys could get cut. They played a little bit last night. I don't think Troy Franklin's in danger of being cut, if for no other reason than Sean Payton proclaiming this draft class as good as his initial draft class in New Orleans. It's not a great look if you have to cut one of them. But I thought all the rookies, Abrams Drain, I thought was solid again. All the rookies basically maintained. Right? Bo Nix was good week 1, good week 2. Jonah Ellis, good week 1, good week 2. Troy Franklin, invisible man week 1, invisible man week 2. Abrams Drain, good week 1, week 2. And I really thought that Troy Franklin and Audric Estime, right, they lowered his carries a little bit because we know he's going to make the roster. Got to see more of P. Ryan. Got to make a decision on Blake Watson. But I thought the rookies maintained and carried over what they were in week 1 and week 2. And for the most part, that's a good thing. In Troy Franklin's case, not so much. And can we just, I know there are more training camp battles than just quarterback. Can we agree Riley Moss got beat on that play? Down the sideline on the Packers' first drive. He got beat on that, right? Like they were saying is good. No, it wasn't. The guy was behind him. Riley Moss got beat. And when it comes to the cornerback position, the less they're like a student at the Milford Academy. We don't want to see you. We don't want to see you. If we're seeing you, then you better be doing something spectacular, because if you're not, then you're probably getting beat. And that was Riley Moss last night on that opening drive. I'm not saying it disqualifies him from being the starter opposite Pat Surtain, but it was said on the broadcast that it was good cover. No, it wasn't. He was beat. Should have been a catch. That's what's tricky about being a corner. Most of the times we notice you, it's not for good things. And that was the case with Riley Moss last night. I don't know how tormented Sean Payton is about these last few roster cut downs, but I don't know that I don't know how much has changed unless that's what you were hoping for. Like, as long as this guy follows it up and plays the same way, he's making the team. Because I thought it was very similar. I look at the players that impressed, the players that didn't. It's like the same list as it was against Indianapolis. And I thought it was important, too, for Greg Dulcich to show off his run after the catch ability. That's kind of his whole thing, right? Get the ball to him and he can run with it. Did that a couple of times. That's good, because if the Broncos clearly are trying to make Lucas Kroll a thing, and Adam Troutman is trusted by Sean Payton, I don't think Greg Dulcich is in a spot where he might get cut, but if he wants to be a thing in that tight end room and get on the field, he needed to showcase some of what he did last night. Take your thoughts. Bo Nix related, or maybe somebody else on the Broncos roster. 719-24-7. 1313. take some of those thoughts coming up next. The Colorado State Fair and Rodeo is back. It opens this Friday, August 23rd. It runs through September 2nd. Plenty of free entertainment and attractions, but also some paid entertainment, whether it be the Carnival or their outstanding concert lineup featuring Ludacris, the Spinners and Commodores, Goo Goo Dolls, and more. It's fun for the whole family, though. Down in Pueblo, August 23rd through September 2nd. Get your tickets at coloradostatefair.com or how about winning from me? I'll be doing this all week, 2 gate admissions and 2 carnival passes. And I will combine them and give them to the 13th texter to text FAIR and their name to 719-247-1313. Just a note, one does not guarantee your admission into the other. That's why I'm putting them together. Get in the fair, you get in the carnival, 2 of each for you. Fair and your name to 719-247-1313. Let's get to some of your texts here. From the 719, is it just me or is Steve Levy awful? Now, Steve Levy, for those who don't know, was calling the game last night, in case you didn't watch, with Ryan Harris, did that week 1. Steve Levy is a hockey guy, and the hockey code is you protect other hockey guys. I like Steve Levy a lot. You cannot pronounce Terrell Davis like Terrell Owens. Can't do that. Can't do it. He did that. He had who was the Jaquan McMillan, had him tied up in knots as he was trying to. It wasn't a little bumpy, but I like Steve Levy. I like him on TV. I like him on the hockey coverage. That's his element. So, yeah, probably not his finest performance last night, but it was one of the finer performances for Caitlin Clark against the Seattle Storm from the 719. Wow, Kaufman. The performance by Clark and Lexi Holt, she had 21 points in that win against Seattle, was sensational. Not a dull moment. Can't remember the last time I was on the edge of my seat watching a game. Forget the pettiness. This was pure athletic performance instead of people talking junk. And you're right. And here's the irony of this. Talked earlier about Caitlin Clark going scorched earth, as I said she would, in her first 2 games out of the Olympic break. Didn't see it a ton against Phoenix. Definitely saw it on display against Seattle. Skylar Diggins-Smith intentionally bumping into her. Jewel Lloyd refusing to answer a question about Caitlin Clark after the game. We've seen that kind of behavior before. The irony of it is your text just now is exactly what the WNBA has been screaming that they want. They want you to watch and be excited and appreciate what they can do on a basketball court. And yet, here we are doing that exact thing to a degree that has, to this point, never been done in the history of mankind. And I'm not talking about what Caitlin Clark has never been done. I'm saying the amount of talk we are having about the WNBA has never happened in the history of mankind. Or womankind, for that matter. We are appreciating somebody who is a superstar, who's leading the league in assists, who's putting up Sombor doubles on a nightly basis. who's hitting highlight reel logo threes and doing all this stuff, and we're appreciating it. We're saying this is awesome. And yet, because it's Caitlin Clark, it's not okay. We're not even picking the right rookie. We have to talk about Angel Reese. Now, I'm sorry. Watch Angel Reese play. It is not as fun as watching Caitlin Clark play. I'm sorry. And it's not as skilled, and it's not as good. It's just not. Angel Reese is good, but Caitlin Clark is better. And that's the thing. This league, because they've had such a niche audience, it's like they want it to be covered like it was before, but they want all of us to watch. Right? The same players, it's because they were like, I'm not saying Asia Wilson is one of the offenders here, but I'm just saying there are players that have been starring in this league for a while, and no one's talked about them. And now all this attention, and it's not being paid to those. That's the whole crux of the thing. Well, I'm sorry, you don't get to dictate what we as a viewing public like or what we want to talk about. You can't control that. And when you try to, Jewel Lloyd, by refusing to answer questions about Caitlin Clark and trying to prop up your own rookies on your team, we are just going to look at you and say you are being petty. They are all benefiting from this, right? But they just, so many of them want to be talked about in a certain way, or they want to be talked about the way they used to, but by more people, if that makes sense. It's like, sorry, a lot of the newcomers, they want to watch Caitlin Clark. Just is what it is. It was that way when the season started, and it has begun to start the second part of this season after the Olympics. But you're right. It was a great game. Played by a lot of very talented players. And it had, some of that, even had the Seattle coach go to the Indiana coach after the game and get in her face about not putting in her bench at the end of that game. It had a lot of stuff that we love about sports. But what's being talked about today? What's the bigger story? Jewel Lloyd doesn't want to talk about Caitlin Clark, and Skylar Diggins-Smith picked up her gait to intentionally bump Caitlin Clark. It wasn't going to be fixed in a half a season. This kind of stuff. It wasn't going to. They weren't going to go into the Olympic break and then come out of the Olympic break and be like, okay, we're ready for the spotlight. May take a year, may take longer than that. Steve G, back to Bo Nix and the Broncos. These players have to understand that there's a rookie player that's better than 95% of them. All you have got to understand that there's always someone going to be better. Oh, no, that's about Caitlin Clark. I'm sorry. It's called maturity. Adds Clark has put up with so much BS, helped the players so much for salary, hotel accommodations, private charters. So, yeah, sorry. I don't know why I thought that was the Bo Nix text. I think it was because earlier I was talking about Bo Nix winning over the locker room. I mean, that, does apply. I mean, Bo Nix right now is better than 95% of the players on the Denver Broncos. Right? That would be fair. Maybe maybe a little much. I mean, but not too far off. So maybe that's why I thought, I'm like, yeah, Bo Nix is better than 95% of them. I know it's possible that the Broncos end up cutting Tim Patrick in order to save money. It would be a tough look given how much excitement is around Tim Patrick because he got his first catch and the unsportsmanlike, the taunting penalty, and then last night he catches a touchdown. It would be very close to the feeling that Broncos country had when Justin Simmons was cut, just like, oh, right? It would be a bummer if Tim Patrick was cut from this team. But I thought it was entirely possible. I don't know. Maybe there is room for both him and Cortland Sutton. Because we know Tim Patrick, and you saw it on his touchdown, right? Like he's a guy that will get into those areas, try to find the open spot in the defense in the intermediate passing game or the short passing game and kind of sit down and make himself a big target. Cortland Sutton's never been that. Cortland Sutton's always been, I'm going to get downfield, toss it up, I'll jump and get it. But I think, and maybe Cortland Sutton's starting to understand this a little bit now. And I'm talking about just in the, this training camp, these last couple of games, because Russell Wilson allowed him to do what he wants to do, right? Go long, I'll toss it up, you jump up and get it. Well, Bo Nix isn't going to give Cortland Sutton a lot of those opportunities because Sean Payton's offense does not call for that. So I think Cortland Sutton should look at what Tim Patrick's doing. And look, Cortland Sutton made a big catch. He made that catch on the sideline. That's why I say I think he's starting to understand it. But Cortland Sutton could take a cue from Tim Patrick in the way to play and how diverse you have to be in your route running in what part of the field you're going to operate in. Cortland Sutton's more talented than Tim Patrick. But Tim Patrick does a little bit better job of operating in all parts of the field. And does it in some different ways than Cortland Sutton. Sean Payton's talked about the size of this position group. It's like a source of pride for him. I think he may like the idea of the big boys. Now, I still think he wants to be a real player when it comes to grabbing guys who are cut come Monday. So if it's not going to be Tim Patrick or Jared Stidham that you're getting rid of, then you're going to have to find a lot of other guys that together will amount to that number that you'll be able to get in cap space if you cut a Tim Patrick or move on from a Jared Stidham. But I'm watching that game last night. My Sutton and Patrick together could work in Sean Payton's offense. And I had some doubts about that. More Tim Patrick in the short term, Cortland Sutton in the longer term. I still think some of their skill sets, they're a little bit overlapping, little redundancy, but hey, for this year, if it's just about, having as much success for Bo Nix as possible, he seems to like throwing to those guys. And I don't love any of these tight ends that the Broncos have. I don't think there's a number one tight end in the group. Maybe Tim Patrick acts kind of as a de facto tight end, and then you have Cortland Sutton. Could work. We'll see. But again, I think that the Broncos want to be aggressive, picking up any key veterans that might find themselves cut after the third week of NFL preseason. 719-247-1313. We'll get to the three stories that are driving the show coming up next. But in the meantime, here's some breaking news. Pain from arthritis, it's just awful. Bone on bone, constant pain. It robs you so much of the stuff that you love to do. But there are effective ways to deal with it, and new Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Monday. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or through the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. 719-247-1313 is the number. If you'd like to call or text in your thoughts or win things like Donnie did. Donnie won a pair of gate admissions to Colorado State Fair and Carnival passes. A giveaway I will continue to do throughout this week. So, keep listening. Your time will come. Right now, let's get it rolling here in the third hour with the three stories that are driving the show. Oh, you don't have to be a radio talk show producer or a host to know where I'm going with story number one. It's just a matter of what do you want to hear Bo Nix saying. How about this? Story number one.
Bo, do you think you've done enough to earn the starting quarterback job?
That's not for me to decide.
Do you feel confident, though, in what you've done in 2 preseason games? You feel
Yep.
good about the body of work?
Yep.
Bo Nix making sure he doesn't stumble at the finish line here, but I don't know that there's any counter argument left for why Bo Nix should not be the starter. Or I guess the counter argument would be to why Bo Nix should be the starter week 1 against Seattle. The only caveat, wiggle room, whatever you want to say, left was just what if Indy was just a good day? Right? I think plenty of people were ready to proclaim him the starter after Indy, but if you were a little bit more hard to please, you may have said, well, I got to see it again. Liked what I saw, want to see it again. 8 of 9 and a touchdown, and erased a 1st and 20 deficit in 2 plays. Yeah, he backed it up. Even the little things, the minutia, right? Sean Payton brought up off-platform throws. I thought he was better in that. I wanted to see him push the ball downfield more. He did that. Raised his yards per throw average from 6 to 9. He's progressing. That's what that means. He's progressing from one week to another. Forget not repeating this. He's not repeating the same mistakes. That was a big thing with Bo Nix, right? And a big thing that Sean Payton said. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Off-platform throws. I don't know if not going downfield is a mistake. It's just what I wanted to see. And he added that. I don't think they need to play him on Sunday. I think Sean Payton, whether it's tomorrow or Wednesday when he meets with the media next, that's plenty of time to sit down with Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham and say, look, we're going with Bo. You know I like you guys. You're all my orphan dogs. But Bo's going to be our starter. He can do it the right way. He wasn't going to announce Bo Nix as the starter right after the game. I don't know who asked that question. I know they have to ask that question. There's 0.0% chance Sean Payton is going to just name Bo Nix the starter after the game. He's going to do it the quote-unquote right way, and he didn't want it to seem like he was handing him the job. Does anybody think he's being handed the job now? He's been the best quarterback on the Broncos in both of these games. He's earned it. It's time. Name him the starter. Don't play him against Arizona. Make that the Zach Wilson showcase game, and let's get ready for Seattle in week 1. He doesn't need to prove anything else. He got it done. Meanwhile, in Pittsburgh,
still not what we're looking for. It was better in some areas, but still JV and too many others.
oh, that's why you love Mike Tomlin. Keeps it real, keeps it 100. What side of the football do you think he was talking about when he referred to it as JV? Not the punting game. He was very happy about the punting game, incidentally. The offense, which started with Russell Wilson. And guess what Russell Wilson did? Get sacked. Guess what he did after that? Got sacked again. Guess what he didn't do? Move the ball downfield. If only somebody would have warned the Pittsburgh Steelers how washed Russell Wilson is. Oh, wait. We did. Oh, wait. Seattle did 2 years before that. The Steelers didn't learn from the Broncos' mistake. But it was never supposed to be the Steelers, getting one over on the rest of the league. This was just, we don't have anyone else. Let's pay this guy next to nothing and see what we get. And somewhere between March and now, I think it was March, right? May, could have been. Whenever they landed Russell Wilson and then soon thereafter Justin Fields, it got lost because it happens to all of us as sports fans and sports media. When somebody changes locations, it's like when Superman puts on his glasses, no one can recognize him. And that always seems like such a ridiculous premise. The difference between Clark Kent and Superman is glasses. Like, I can tell that's Superman. How can you not tell it's Superman? It's the reverse here. How can you not tell that just because he's wearing a Steelers uniform, it's still Russell Wilson? Because we trick ourselves into it. We want to believe. And every player looks better in our team's colors. It's just a piece of sports fan and sports media psychology. Even the national media is like in shambles today over the Pittsburgh Steelers. They might finish last in the division. Oh, you mean arguably the best division in football? Yeah, there was a decent chance that was going to happen anyway. What is this Chicken Little stuff that's happening on ESPN today? Steelers were always the fourth most talented team in that division. Their goals are almost independent of the division. Get to 9 wins. That's the benchmark. That's what the Steelers organization seems to be okay with. It would be difficult to do finishing last in your division, but it's not impossible. Somewhere along the way, Russell Wilson took his glasses off. No, it would be the other way. Russell Wilson lost his cape like 5 years ago. It's gone. He had no more cape. But like he puts on fancy, but it's that Superman analogy of it's still Russell Wilson. You're not fooling anybody, but clearly Russell Wilson fooled tons of people. The answer to this is very simple. It's a very easy answer. Just start Justin Fields week 1. You were going to go to him anyway. At some point, week 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, certainly you didn't think that you were going to be able to get by of that murderer's row of a schedule you have in the last month or so with Russell Wilson. You were going to go to Justin Fields. You just wanted to do it after you coached some of the bad habits he picked up in Chicago out of him. Well, sorry, you can't do that now. But just make him the starter. He's better than Russell Wilson. He runs away from sacks. Russell Wilson runs into him. Like, it's a very simple solution for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the problem is you're going to have Russell Wilson standing there on the sideline looking awkward as all get out for the entirety of the season. They may have to cut him. They might have to cut him. Because if they go with Justin Fields, you can't have Russell Wilson as your backup. You saw it. How awkward was it? Russell Wilson, every other camera frame was him. While Jared Stidham's out there leading the Denver Broncos. Like, you can't have that. He's not a backup quarterback. He's a starter. He's nothing. That's where it gets complicated. It's not complicated in who should be the quarterback. It's Justin Fields. But it can get awkward with Russell Wilson. That's kind of his thing. If you haven't noticed, awkwardness. That's what Russell Wilson does, baby. Awkward. Let's go story number 3. We'll stick in the NFL for it.
Can't take the good and not take the bad, right? So wish it ended well for both gentlemen, right? And it just didn't. And we'll look at it. We'll evaluate. They both had opportunities. Aiden had 20 attempts and Minshew had 21. So about as balanced and as we can get it. And we'll look at it. Obviously, you saw what our plan was tonight. Throw the ball around, let these guys showcase what they can do, and we'll talk about it.
Antonio Pierce sounds thrilled with his quarterbacking situation. He named Gardner Minshew the starter this year for the Las Vegas Raiders. And that was his ringing endorsement. That's the last thing he said before he named Gardner Minshew the starter. Yeah. I think I'm ready to I think that the Broncos may beat the Raiders in the AFC West. I think they might. That's not one game. That's not one game emotion there from Antonio Pierce. That's an entire training camp of him going, I got nothing. I got nothing. I got the Jorts guy that lives in an RV, and I got this guy that people liked because, I don't know, he went to the same school as Drew Brees. Like, I have nothing. That's what you're hearing in Antonio Pierce. That's not a reaction to last night. That's Antonio Pierce. Like, I've been seeing this for weeks. I got nothing. Can't wait for the second season of Receiver when they asked Devontae Adams about Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. If you're a Bronco fan, it's about as good of a preseason weekend as you could ask. Bo Nix looks great. Russell Wilson looks awful, and the Raiders are exacerbated about their or exasperated. That's the word I'm looking for. Exasperated about their quarterbacking situation. Now, I can't do anything about Patrick Mahomes throwing a behind-the-back pass in a game. Like, that still exists. Can't do anything about that for you, but there you go. Pittsburgh, Vegas. It's going much worse than it is in Denver. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, as good as Bo Nix has been, why I still don't think it moves the needle that much for the Denver Broncos this upcoming season. have been making the rounds. He said some interesting things on the Dan Lebitard show, which made me believe, we stick up for, and I'm not trying to get into what Brian Flores is alleged on why he wasn't getting a job. Okay, but there's somewhere in there could be the possibility that he just wasn't that good of a coach. Possible. The Belichick tree is not the most fruitful of all the coaching trees. Okay, I'm not saying one way or another whether what he alleges is true or not. I'm just saying, some teams could have made the decision not to make Brian Flores their head coach because he's not that good. It's possible. Like, both things can be true. So if you didn't hear him, Tua went on the Dan Lebitard show and put the difference between Brian Flores and Mike McDaniel in essentially this context. If you were told every day under a boss that you didn't deserve it, you weren't any good, and then you went to someone who told you that you're perfect for what he wants to do and you're good at what you do, how do you think that you would respond? So Brian Flores cut down Tua at every turn, and we know that Brian Flores did not want Tua. Tried every which way. He couldn't even give him the entire game when he was a rookie. He kept trying to go to Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, he's cutting him down and telling him he's not any good, telling him and then Mike McDaniel comes in and you're like, you're exactly what I need. And Mike McDaniel talks about needing to pay, they should pay him and all this kind of stuff, was a big proponent. And in fact, when Tua's deal, when Tua's been talking about his deal, he's like, Mike McDaniel is going to bat for me. Now, Tom Brady responded to those comments, talking about how if you are not, that criticism should not shake your confidence, that you should be confident in who you are as a player. And just because someone tells you can't or you're not any good should not change it. And I respect Tom Brady's side of it and understand that he played for Belichick, who probably said some of those things to him. Part of being a coach is understanding what buttons to push. Tom Brady is one of those guys that works. You can't do this. You can't make it. Being told he can't, being cut down. That's what Brady thrived on. And that's why it worked with him and Belichick. But part of being a good coach is being able to recognize, like, hey, am I motivating my player or am I destroying his confidence? To say nothing of whether you agree with Brady or you agree with Tua. I actually lean a little bit in Tom Brady's camp on this, because I do think you need to be confident enough in what you are as a professional to not be shaken by someone criticizing you. But at the same time, if it came from somebody you're supposed to respect in your coach and maybe you look up to in some way, and they keep telling you and over again, I got to imagine that that's got to affect you at some point. But I can agree, you can agree with Brady or you can agree with Tua, but understand that it's Brian Flores' job to understand what makes his players tick. And if Tua, whether you want to call him soft or whether you think that he's right to call out Brian Flores, it's still on Brian Flores to know what buttons to push. Did he not get any indication after a training camp, after a few games, that, hey, this isn't working? Like, Tua's not responding well to this. That's part of being a coach. That's part of being a manager. Some people at your place of employment need to be built up. Some people need to be motivated. Some are carrot people, some are stick people. Good managers, good bosses, good coaches understand which one you are to get the most out of you. So the criticism of Brian Flores is not that he was a big meanie necessarily. It's that he had a player who does not respond to that kind of motivation, and he would not change his tactics. Belichick never needed to change his tactics because that's exactly what Tom Brady needed. And even then, Tom Brady got fed up with Bill Belichick. There was even a threshold for Tom Brady where he's like, dude, I'm the greatest quarterback ever. Stop talking to me like I'm the 6th round pick again. And he wanted to go someplace where he wouldn't be ridden as hard as he was by Belichick. So even Tom Brady, and I think what he's saying, I agree with a lot of what he says, but even he got tired of it. Is that only okay when you've established yourself as the greatest quarterback in the history of football? Or can it be okay? And I don't think Tua is so mentally weak that if you just said, hey, that wasn't a very good throw, that he was going to fall to pieces. He did play under Nick Saban. Think about that. Brian Flores was apparently much worse and much more critical of Tua than Nick Saban was. That's when you need to look at yourself in the mirror and go, okay, if I'm harsher than Nick Saban, maybe I need to recalibrate just a bit. I'm sure Tua can take constructive criticism. It's not black or white. It's not either Tua's weak or he's tough. It could be, hey, I'm a rookie. I'm new to this. I'm getting pulled from my starts to put in Fitzpatrick, and then I'm going back in, and then you're telling me I stink, and I'm having it's nuanced. It's layered. Managing the egos of your players, no matter how out of control they are, is part of the gig. Tua doesn't strike me as the most high maintenance quarterback in the NFL. He doesn't strike me as the most mentally soft quarterback in the NFL. Needs a little bit more carrot than stick. And Brian Flores never understood it. Never wanted to understand it. And now look at how much better Tua is under Mike McDaniel. And even the other night, they were interviewing Mike McDaniel, and he said they drew up the same play that they did against Houston for the first drive of the game. And Mike McDaniel's like, and Tua completed it instead of throwing an interception. So that was good. So you can kind of get a glimpse that while Mike McDaniel is very supportive of Tua, that there is that room for him to needle him a little bit. And maybe that's the best way to do it. Like, give him a hard time. Don't tell him that he's pathetic. God know Belichick knew that Brady wanted to be pushed in that way. And so he kept on and he kept on, and it got the best out of Brady, to his credit. But what happened when a lot of those players that had grown up around Tom Brady, been a part of the organization, what happened towards the end of Belichick's time? Doesn't relate to today's player. And maybe that means today's player is softer. Like, okay, maybe that's a debate, but hey, you want to coach. You got to figure it out. Want to tell you before I go about Low T Center, if you don't mind.